What is the stupidest thing someone has told you with complete conviction? She said. If you dream about falling and you hit the ground in your sleep, you'll actually die. It's been proven. I said, if you die in your sleep, how can anyone know what you were dreaming? Ruined a favorite story of hers. Sorry. I've died in my dreams before, and then got really excited because I was still conscious, so that meant there must be an afterlife, and then woke up. From a coworker, if you don't have a social security number, then the government can't do anything to you. I asked if that meant, if I didn't have an SSN, then I could just go kill someone on the street and the government couldn't arrest me. Yep, he said, if you don't have an SSN, then they can't enforce any laws on you. That we set the clocks forwards and backwards so the birds don't get confused with their migration patterns. 2 people can breathe underwater forever if they have a hose. The first person breathes in while the second breathes out, then the first person breathes out and the second person breathes in, etc. Ah yes, the technique is known as Darwin's murder-suicide. Pineapples aren't real. They're entirely man-made and do not exist in nature. In that case, they should have made them easier to peel. Boy, I hope somebody got fired for that blunder. A guy I work with said that a football referee runs over the distance of a marathon during a game. I pointed out that a football game was only 90 minutes long and that the marathon record was just over 2 hours, so that would be impossible. He said it was possible, because a football referee changes direction a lot during a game, and it all adds up. My dad was experiencing end-stage renal failure, was on dialysis at the time and has since had a transplant. My best friend's boyfriend at the time looked at me dead in the eye and said he could reverse his condition with a vegan diet and that the only important organ in the body was the skin, so as long as you take good care of your skin, your other organs will function properly. Mind you, by the time my dad got on dialysis, his kidneys were functioning at 11% and his skin was just fine. Dude. I kid you not, I was in the car the other day driving with my partner's 2 brothers. My stepmom called me and I had the car audio on, and she essentially let me know that my dad had just discovered he had cancer. They went inside while I processed, and when I got inside, one of the brothers looked me straight in the eye and told me the same exact thing. I hope my look conveyed my thoughts. I know a girl who thinks pretty everything can be cured by diet, or what you eat. Including my 16-year-old autistic nephew. Infuriating. Cars? They don't have cars. They have donkeys or walk to their huts. 40-year-old black women talking to me about Africa. She refused to believe me, who had been to Kenya, that there are cities and people have cars. Even after showing her pic and explaining Africa has normal stuff just like the West. She refused to believe it or the internet. I knew someone way back in high school who was shocked that other countries other than America had running water and electricity. She thought they just lived in mud huts and still used spears, bows, and arrows. When my history teacher at the time told her otherwise, her mouth was hanging open for a few seconds, then she shook her head, and said, no, while folding her arms. She refused to believe otherwise, and surprise, surprise, she failed the class. At one of my first jobs as a graphic designer, a client called me into his office and pulled up a photo he took. He then asked me if I could turn it around. No, not rotate it, but turn the viewpoint around. He wanted to see what was behind the camera when he originally took the photo. God, I have so many stories from that job. Oh, I read many years ago a spin on that one. A customer from a burger business sends a picture of a wrapped burger and asks the designer to edit it so it can show the burger half unwrapped. The designer says, sure, just send me the picture of the unwrapped burger, and the customer goes crazy asking the designer to unwrap the burger in Photoshop. First girlfriend was religious, and apparently it was okay that we had sex as long as she feels bad about it after. Pre-planning regret was her loophole to do what she wanted. That the speed of light wasn't like an actual number, it was just a figure of speech. Well, the speed of light can vary greatly based on what medium it is traveling through. We have entire groups of scientists that spend their time slowing down light as part of their research. What we typically think of when we say the speed of light is the speed of light in a vacuum. The speed of light in other things can be less than that. Once had a guy who tried to argue that periods were nature's way of saying that a girl was ready to have sex. They also not only tried to use this to rationalize sleeping with someone who was underage, but also tried to argue that it wasn't pedophilia to sleep with someone underage if they had gone through puberty. because in their mind puberty equals no longer child. They also believed that if an underage girl got pregnant then that wasn't a big problem because they believed the body wouldn't get pregnant if it couldn't endure pregnancy. It wasn't just stupid and highly uneducated, but also screwed up on so many levels, and the clincher? The man was aspiring to become a teacher. Sunburn is not caused by the sun, it is actually caused by sunblock. If you don't use sunblock then you will never be burned. Sunburn was created by the sun cream industry to see their products. Seems easily testable, why not lie on the beach all day in one position with no sunblock and see what happens? Make sure you fall asleep for maximum effect. Spoiler, you go bright red and then blister to the point that you get taken to hospital for a combination of sunstroke and the beginning of shock, then spend the rest of the holiday indoors face down with regular application of creams and replacement paraffin patches on the burns. It puts a bit of a dampener on your 2-week break. I'm a dental hygienist. We had a patient come in with terrible teeth. They thought toothpaste caused cancer. My cousin, a city boy who's never been around farm animals, once told me that only human women feel pain from childbirth, on account of punishment for original sin, and that I, a country gal who has seen many a farm animal give painful, difficult birth, as well as a mother who has experienced the same, was wrong in asserting that he was incorrect. This is painful to read. I had a doctor tell me that it's impossible for Matthew McConaughey's character in Interstellar to age less than his daughter while being in the planet close to the black hole, because everyone has the same biological clock. A distant relative, recently retired, once told me that he was going to hire a gardener and a housekeeper because the government will give you a grant to pay for them now. This was a few minutes after a lengthy rant about how the welfare state should be scrapped because only lazy people lose their jobs and need to claim benefits. The same relative, some years ago, also announced with absolute conviction that he was going to hire a neighbor as a cleaner because she won't have anything to do now her kids are grown up. Girl I was talking to, with complete seriousness, tried telling me that the testosterone produced in women's bodies was structurally different than the testosterone produced in men. If it was structurally different, then it wouldn't be testosterone, it'd be a different hormone. That celebrities drink the blood of children to stay young, and that's why celebrities on Zoom calls during the pandemic looked worse because they couldn't get their blood. Or maybe they just didn't have access to professional makeup artists during lockdown. There is at least one guy, not really a celebrity, Silicon Valley tech monster, who is getting blood transfusions from his son to be young again. He's quite open about it. I don't know how his teenage son feels about it. And a lot of other stuff. He's a lunatic who wants to live forever because when you get too rich you think you can conquer death. Wife's uncle was certain I didn't pay any taxes as a federal employee. He said it didn't make sense for the gov to pay me a salary derived from tax revenue only to then have me pay taxes back to the government. Yes, that does make sense, and it is exactly how it works. Even still, he screamed at me at Thanksgiving one year. Similar. Was at a dinner party when asked what I did for a living. Stated I was a Fed, and named the agency. Next question was, what type of research do you do? Me, we aren't a research agency, over 50% of our budget goes to state and local. Him, well, then, you're not a Fed, because if you don't do research then you're in private industry. A girl I worked with was convinced that every single mythological creature was real. I'll never forget one of her claims. Think about it, every movie you done seen all those creatures and aliens and shit, all that's real. Someone has to have actually seen it to come up with that. Apparently there's no such thing as the human imagination to her. So yes, Transformers are real, Godzilla is real, Independence Day is real. This was a 20-year-old that said all of this. In early 2021 I was informed, quite earnestly, by a random lady in a shop that you could tell who had been vaccinated against the big virus by placing a magnet on them as the vaccine made you magnetic. Worked with a guy who was adamant that evolution was fake. I pointed out human-guided, sped-up evolution, domesticated dogs and the often harmful breeding for certain attributes, seedless fruits and vegetables, that elephant tusks are getting smaller as the larger tusked specimens are killed for their ivory, leaving smaller tusked ones as the main breeders, and even pointed out how in a small span of time we can see human evolution in average heights, shrinking pinky toes, and prevalence of certain eye and hair colors. His response was, "That's not evolution, that's genetics." He refused to believe when I explained that genetics plus time equals evolution. An woman once said to me, "It's amazing that we are at sea level, so high up in these mountains." We were at Lake Tahoe, which is over 6,000 feet above sea level. When I asked her what she meant, she said, "All water on Earth levels out, so we are at sea level." Her adult daughter told her to shut up and then whispered to me, "The worst part is she's a teacher."